Triple H watched Solo Sikoa's win, and his reaction said everything, but one thing he did next shocked even WWE staff. Night of Champions wasn't just about titles, it was about power. Solo didn't just win. He conquered. And backstage, cameras caught Triple H standing, silent. Arms crossed. Jaw locked. This wasn't pride. It wasn't approval. It looked like concern. Because he saw something different in Solo's eyes, something uncontrollable. And then Hunter picked up his phone. And made a private call. To who? No one knows. But when Triple H moves in silence, something big is coming. Follow to find out who's next. What if I told you that one of the most powerful men in wrestling stood completely still, because he saw something that scared him? Not a wrestler. Not a manager. Not even a fan. Triple H. The game. The cerebral assassin. The current architect of WWE's future. And yet, at Night of Champions, in a moment where every instinct should have screamed applaud, celebrate, or strategize, he froze. Arms folded. Brows tight. Eyes locked. Jaw clenched. Like a man staring down a threat he didn't see coming. That threat was Solo Sikoa. But before we get to the phone call, before we unravel what that silent stare actually meant, we need to back up. Because what happened that night wasn't just another chapter in WWE drama. It was a power shift. The kind that starts quietly, like the first crack in glass before it shatters. Night of Champions wasn't just a pay-per-view. It was a pressure cooker. Titles were on the line. Reputations were at stake. And under the glittering lights of Jeddah Superdome, alliances were tested like never before. At the center of it all? Solo Sikoa. A man known for his silence, for his impact, for his bloodline. Not just Roman's cousin. Not just the enforcer. Solo is the walking embodiment of what happens when potential meets punishment. That night, he wasn't the side character. He was the main event energy, and he delivered. His opponent? Doesn't even matter for this part. Because what Solo did in that ring wasn't just win. He dominated. Cold. Relentless. Calculated. Almost mechanical, like he wasn't just fighting for victory, but for control. And backstage? Triple H was watching. Picture this, the crowd's roaring. The commentary team's losing their minds. The referee counts to 3, Solo's hand is raised. But the camera cuts backstage. Triple H standing. Silent. Alone. No clapping. No nod. No fist bump. Just stillness. You ever see someone have an oh no moment, but they don't panic? They just absorb? That's what it looked like. Like the gears in his mind had just jammed. Some WWE staff later described it as unnerving. One unnamed road agent even said, "I've worked with Hunter for years. I've seen him lose his mind after matches. I've seen him elated. I've seen him mad. But I've never seen him like that. Not blank. Not worried." And maybe you're thinking, he was just playing it cool. But then it happened. He reached into his pocket. Pulled out his phone. Made a call. No expression change. No emotion. Just pressed the phone to his ear and walked out of frame. That's it. That's all we saw. But that tiny moment, less than 10 seconds on screen, has launched a firestorm of speculation. Let's be clear about something, WWE is not a subtle business. This is the same place where people return from the dead, betray family members mid-match, and cash in briefcases on broken bodies. Everything is big. Loud. Obvious. Which is exactly why this quiet moment was so powerful. In a world of pyro and promos, Triple H said everything by saying nothing. And fans noticed. Clips of that backstage footage flooded TikTok and YouTube within minutes. Reaction videos. Theory breakdowns. Frame-by-frame analysis. Some said he was calling Roman Reigns. Others said it was a call to The Rock. A few whispered that it was to a non-wrestler, someone outside the storyline entirely. One Reddit thread with 13,000 upvotes said, "That wasn't an in-character reaction. That was Hunter the executive realizing he just lost control of the chessboard." Because here's the thing, Triple H didn't build his legacy by being caught off guard. And yet, something in Solo's win, maybe the aggression, maybe the lack of emotion, maybe the way he walked out of the ring like it meant nothing, shook him. This wasn't just about Solo Sikoa winning a match. This was about a man who was never meant to be the face of the company, slowly becoming the one holding the knife behind the throne. Solo doesn't smile. Doesn't cut lengthy promos. Doesn't play to the crowd. He hurts people. He obeys when it suits him. He disobeys when it doesn't. And more importantly, he doesn't care about being loved, cheered, or even respected. In a company where stars are built through charisma and catchphrases, Solo is an anomaly. And anomalies are dangerous, especially when they win. Triple H knew this. You could see it. This wasn't the proud mentor watching a prospect succeed. This was the man pulling the strings, suddenly realizing one puppet had cut their own. What separates this moment from typical WWE theater is the feeling. Wrestling fans are savvy. They know when something's being oversold or when it's real. But Triple H's reaction? It wasn't produced. It wasn't promoted. It felt like a camera accidentally caught a private moment. And that's the magic. We're not talking about heel turns or babyface pushes. We're talking about power dynamics in real time. Think about it. Roman's grip on the bloodline has weakened. Jimmy is rebellious. Jay is gone. Paul Heyman looks like he's aged a decade in stress. And Solo? Solo's evolving. Fast. He doesn't need Roman's approval. He doesn't wait for permission. He just acts. And in WWE, acting without orders is how you end up changing the hierarchy. The mystery call, who did Triple H contact? Let's go back to that phone call for a second. We never see who's on the other end. We don't hear a word. Not even a hello. But that's what makes it so unsettling. Was it Roman Reigns? Maybe Triple H wanted to warn him, you need to handle Solo before he handles you. Paul Heyman? Possibly seeking insight. Or maybe giving orders, contain this. Fast. Shawn Michaels? Could this be about NXT roots, Solo's foundation? A debut star? A fresh face to balance the scales? Or someone else entirely? No one knows. And that's the point. This wasn't meant to be solved in one night. It was meant to make you ask questions. Because in WWE, when you're not sure what's real, that's when you know something real is happening. If you're a casual fan, you might have missed it. If you're a hardcore fan, you're probably already analyzing every blink from that clip. But regardless of where you land, here's the truth, something shifted at Night of Champions. This wasn't a storyline climax. It was a trigger event. Solo Sikoa's win wasn't just about gold. It was about momentum, about fear, about a new kind of power rising, the kind Triple H might not be able to control. And when Triple H moves in silence, it's not to hide weakness. It's to prepare for war. The Jeddah Superdome in Saudi Arabia stood like a coliseum reborn. 70,000 fans packed the seats, waving flags, holding signs, and chanting names that echoed across cultures and time zones. The air was thick with anticipation, buzzing with that unique electricity only WWE can generate when something important is about to happen. Night of Champions had been billed as a celebration of gold, a showcase of champions. But everyone who'd been following the product knew there was something more. Something beneath the surface. A story that wasn't just about who walked away with belts, It was about who walked away with control. And all eyes, knowingly or not, would eventually turn to Solo Sikoa. Earlier in the night, matches came and went. Some brought closure. Others opened doors. But when it was time for Solo's match, the energy in the building shifted. People didn't just cheer or boo. They leaned in. Because even if they didn't fully understand what was coming, they knew they were about to see something different. Solo wasn't in the main event, at least not on paper. But when he walked through that curtain, accompanied only by Paul Heyman, who seemed visibly shaken before the bell even rang, it became clear, this was the match to watch. His opponent was no pushover. A proven star. A technical workhorse. Someone who had earned their spot and carried credibility. This was the kind of matchup WWE fans live for, unpredictable, high stakes, and full of potential outcomes. The bell rang. What followed was not a match in the traditional sense. It was a message. Solo didn't wrestle. He dismantled. Everything from his entrance to his pacing inside the ring suggested he wasn't there to win. He was there to destroy. The first minute saw an explosive flurry, Solo launching into his opponent with a corner splash and a snap Samoan drop that landed like a thunderclap. Every move was executed with surgical precision, but it didn't feel like a technician at work. It felt like a predator on instinct. The audience, initially loud, began to quiet. Not out of boredom. Out of tension. They were watching something that didn't feel rehearsed. Solo's strikes had a weight to them. His facial expressions never shifted. There was no taunt, no showboating. Just focus. Just damage. At one point, the opponent managed to mount a comeback. A sequence of counters. A near fall that almost caught Solo. For a brief moment, the match regained its balance. And then Solo snapped it back in his favor like he'd never lost control. A spinning heel kick. A corner super kick. A diving headbutt. Then silence. Not in the arena. The arena was loud. But Solo? Still silent. Still cold. Like he hadn't even broken a sweat. Like none of it mattered. That's when the finish came. Sudden. Violent. Final. Sikoa hit the Samoan spike. The referee's hand hit the mat 3 times. The match was over. No celebration. No music cue at first. Just Solo standing over his opponent, staring down at what he'd done with the kind of blank intensity that doesn't read as confidence, it reads as something else. Something darker. Then the camera cut backstage. TripleH watching. That's when everything changed. But before we analyze that moment, we have to understand the context of what Solo did in the ring. This wasn't a storyline victory. It wasn't about rankings. It was a statement of dominance that sent ripples far beyond that one match. After the bell, Solo didn't pose. He didn't point at the camera. He didn't yell into the void about being next in line. He simply left the ring. Walked up the ramp. Paul Heyman followed, hands nervously clasped. His body language screamed confusion. Fear, even. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. Heyman trailing behind Solo, not beside him. A subtle visual cue that the balance of power had begun to shift. Commentary tried to catch up. Michael Cole offered professional praise, but there was hesitation in his tone. Corey Graves tried to bring the focus back to the big picture, calling Solo the most dangerous enforcer WWE has ever seen. But even that felt underwhelming compared to what we'd just witnessed. Because Solo didn't just defeat an opponent. He eclipsed them. In that ring, in that moment, he looked like something WWE hadn't had in years. A rising star who didn't want the spotlight, didn't need approval, and wasn't playing a character. He looked like the personification of threat. And while the match itself may have only lasted 10 minutes, its impact felt seismic. When a performer wins in WWE, the typical formula follows: celebration, recap highlights, setup for the next feud. This match broke that formula in all the right ways. There were no fireworks. No grinning promo to follow. Just silence. Power. And that uneasy feeling that maybe we were watching the beginning of something WWE didn't fully intend. Backstage, Triple H didn't react with celebration. He didn't high-five anyone. There was no congratulatory interaction. Just that stare. That silence. That call. This matters because Triple H has never been passive when it comes to high-stakes victories. Historically, he's the guy you see smiling behind the curtain when a star is being made. He shakes hands. He nods in approval. He books the next chapter in real time. But not this time. This time, the look wasn't pride. It was concern. Because the way Solo won wasn't just overwhelming. It was indifferent. He didn't win because he wanted glory. He won because he could. That difference changes everything. The real story of Night of Champions didn't unfold in the ring. It unfolded in the seconds after. The questions it raised had nothing to do with titles and everything to do with control. Who controls Solo Sikoa? Is it Roman Reigns? Is it Paul Heyman? Is it Triple H? Or is the scarier answer, no one? That's why this match matters. That's why this entire night matters. Because in that 10-minute stretch, the WWE landscape subtly but unmistakably shifted. And not everyone was ready. Fans watching at home might have just seen another W for the Bloodline. Another dominant performance from the silent muscle of the group. But those paying attention saw something much bigger. They saw a man stepping out of the role he was cast into. They saw an executive realize the train he helped build might now be running off the rails. They saw the beginning of a new kind of reign. One that doesn't come with declarations or drama. Just actions. Solo Sikoa didn't just win. He crossed a line. And that's why everyone's talking about what happened next. In WWE, reactions are often louder than action. A cheer, a gasp, a sudden heel turn. The crowd roars, the commentary explodes, and the cameras follow every twitch of a superstar's body language. Every win is followed by a story beat, every loss by a new angle. That's the rhythm fans are used to. But not this time. Because when Solo Sikoa won his match at Night of Champions, after 10 minutes of cold brutality, the most unforgettable moment didn't happen in the ring. It happened backstage. It lasted barely 8 seconds. And it said more than any promo could. Triple H alone. Watching. Silent. Let's break that image down. He wasn't surrounded by talent. No producers, no agents, no other execs. No clapping from backstage. No excitement. He wasn't mid-conversation. He wasn't checking his phone. He wasn't pacing. He was just standing still, eyes locked on the monitor. Arms crossed. Lips tight. Jaw flexed. And that expression, barely there, barely readable, was not the look of a man satisfied. You could almost miss it. But once you saw it, you couldn't look away. Because in that exact moment, Triple H looked less like the creative mastermind of WWE and more like a man watching a mistake unfold in real time. This wasn't pride. This wasn't celebration. This was calculation. Concern. A sudden realization that something had gone further than expected. Now, let's be honest. Triple H has seen it all. He's not easily shaken. He's been in the business for decades. He's helped build superstars, bury legends, and resurrect careers. He knows what a breakout performance looks like. And Solo's match? From a creative standpoint, it was a breakout. That's undeniable. But Triple H didn't smile. He didn't lean over to anyone and nod. He didn't show any satisfaction that his talent booking had just produced a future main eventer. He stood there like a man who'd just lost leverage. What makes this even more fascinating is the contrast. WWE backstage reactions are typically explosive. Think about past breakout matches. When Seth Rollins cashed in at WrestleMania, when Daniel Bryan lifted the titles at WrestleMania 30, when Becky Lynch became the man. There's always footage of high fives, cheers, hugs, emotion. And yet here we had silence. That silence is everything. It's not just the absence of sound. It's the presence of doubt. The stillness of a man who's realizing the equation has changed. Let's zoom out for a moment. Triple H is not just a character anymore. He's not just a former world champion. He's the creative force behind WWE's current direction. Since stepping into his executive role, he's had a hand in shaping story arcs, developing talent, building stars that fit his vision of what modern wrestling should be. Solo Sikoa was part of that plan. Brought up from NXT. Planted firmly into the Bloodline storyline. Positioned as muscle. Meant to be a piece of the machine. But what happens when a piece starts moving on its own? That's what Triple H was watching. Not just a win, but a shift. A piece breaking free of the machine. And you could see the moment it clicked. The jaw tightened. The eyes narrowed. And then, the call. He reached into his suit pocket, pulled out his phone, and dialed. No words spoken. No emotion shown. Just the movement of a man who knew he had to act fast, and didn't want to be seen acting at all. Why does this matter? Because Triple H isn't a man who acts without reason. His entire career has been built on calculated control. From his days in DX to his reign as the Game to his time running NXT, everything he does is based on strategy. And yet, that phone call didn't look like part of a long-term plan. It looked like damage control. Now, let's talk about what the silence wasn't. It wasn't confusion. Triple H doesn't get confused. He may be surprised, but he always processes. It wasn't boredom. He was locked in. Watching Solo like a man watches a live wire on the floor. It wasn't approval. If this had been part of the plan, there would have been some hint of satisfaction. A smirk. A nod. Something. But there was nothing. Only stillness. And that's what made it loud. Some backstage sources later suggested that Hunter's reaction was measured. But insiders close to creative have hinted at something more serious. One producer said anonymously, he didn't say anything for a full 5 minutes after that match. Didn't move. Didn't speak. Then he just left. That's not normal. Another unnamed source added, there was talk earlier in the week about Solo going over strong, but not that strong. There's a belief now that what happened out there was a little more intense than what was planned. So what happened? Did Solo go off script? Did something backstage trigger a reaction Triple H wasn't expecting? Or did Hunter simply see what we're all seeing now, that Solo isn't just the future of WWE, he might be the threat to its future as well? Here's the thing about wrestling power, it doesn't just come from belts. It comes from presence. From unpredictability. From fear. And Solo Sikoa now commands all three. That's why Triple H stood there frozen. Not because he didn't know what happened. But because he suddenly realized he didn't know what happens next. And in WWE, not knowing is the scariest thing there is. There's one more detail worth noting. During the live broadcast, the camera lingered on Triple H longer than usual. Normally, a backstage cutaway like that lasts maybe 3 seconds. Just long enough to see someone watching. But this shot? It held. 5 seconds. Then 6. Enough to show the expression. The arms. The call. Was it intentional? Some think so. Others argue it was a production slip. That the director didn't cue the next shot fast enough. But regardless, it gave the audience something rare, a real moment. A break in the show. A sliver of unscripted energy in a world designed to stay controlled. And it worked. Social media exploded. Not over the match. Over the stare. Over the call. Over what it meant. Because fans understand symbolism. They understand when a match ends with a belt in the air, that's triumph. But when it ends with the boss frozen backstage, that's a warning. The moment may have been short, but its implications are huge. It raises questions about Triple H's control over the product. About whether Solo Sikoa is still under direction or has become something WWE didn't anticipate. And more importantly, it suggests that whatever happens next won't come through official announcements or storyline previews. It'll come quietly. Strategically. Just like that phone call. Triple H isn't scared of strong talent. He built strong talent. He developed Kevin Owens. Seth Rollins. Finn Balor. He respects power. But he fears chaos. He fears unpredictability. Because unpredictability in WWE doesn't just derail storylines, it destabilizes empires. Solo Sikoa is not chaos in the traditional sense. He's not wild. He doesn't rant. He doesn't rebel. But he is unpredictable. Because he doesn't follow anyone's cues. And that makes him dangerous. Triple H knows this. And that's why his silence spoke louder than anything else at Night of Champions. Who is Solo Sikoa, really? When Solo Sikoa walks to the ring, you don't hear a catchphrase. You don't hear pyrotechnics drowning out the crowd. You hear his boots. That slow, deliberate stride. That sharp stare that cuts straight through the noise. He doesn't flex. He doesn't grin. He doesn't ask for approval. He comes to do one thing, hurt people. He's not a mystery in the sense that we don't know where he came from. His story is public, his bloodline even more so. But what makes Solo Sikoa really dangerous isn't what's on the record. It's what's still being written. Because WWE may have brought him in as part of a storyline, Roman Reigns heavy, the loyal cousin, the silent enforcer, but it's clear now that he's something entirely different. He's not just the next big thing. He's the next big threat. To understand why Triple H froze after his win, why the company seems tense whenever he's involved, why Paul Heyman looks more like a hostage than an advisor. You have to understand who Solo Sikoa is underneath the TV character. And that starts with his name. Solo Sikoa. The name wasn't chosen randomly. Solo evokes isolation. It tells you he's separate. Not just from opponents, but from the pack. Even inside the bloodline, he always stood apart. While Jimmy and Jay leaned into tag team chemistry, Solo was the blunt weapon. The strike force. The one who never needed to be flanked. And Sikoa. A nod to the family name, but also one that sets him apart from the Reigns, the Usos, and the Anoa'i legacy. It acknowledges his bloodline without binding him to it. Even the choice of his look tells a story. While Roman drips in gold and ceremonial garb, and the Usos bring flair and bravado, Solo walks in like a street fighter. Bare feet. Taped fists. Tattoos and silence. There's nothing theatrical about him. And that's exactly what makes him cinematic. Born Joseph Fatu, Solo grew up immersed in wrestling's most dominant dynasty. The Anoa'i family isn't just a footnote in wrestling history, it is wrestling history. His father, Rikishi, was one of the most charismatic big men of the Attitude Era. His brothers, Jimmy and Jay, formed one of the most successful tag teams of all time. His cousins include Roman Reigns, Yokozuna, Umaga, and even The Rock. But here's the twist, unlike his relatives, Solo didn't debut with fanfare. He wasn't a main roster darling. He cut his teeth on the independent circuit. Trained at the WWE Performance Center. Then made his mark in NXT. And that's where things started to change. In NXT, Solo didn't enter with a spotlight. He didn't write his last name. He earned his respect through matches. Through knockdowns. Through chaos. He wasn't booked to win every time. But every time he wrestled, people noticed. He didn't need promos. His matches were the promos. What separated Solo in NXT was the way he carried himself. Other young stars were trying to get over. Solo wasn't trying. He just was. He didn't care about the crowd's reaction. He didn't need the microphone. He came out, wrecked people, and walked off. Cold. Efficient. Unapologetic. When he got called up to the main roster and inserted into the bloodline, fans thought they knew the playbook. This was just Roman's new right hand. The muscle. The third Uso. A guy who would do Roman's bidding while Heyman whispered in his ear. But Solo didn't act like a subordinate. He listened, sure. Followed orders at first. But even then, there were signs. He never smiled during bloodline celebrations. Never cracked during in-ring speeches. Never needed the microphone to get over. He wasn't there to entertain. He was there to control. Control the damage. Control the narrative. And, maybe, control the future. As the bloodline saga unfolded, tensions began to crack. Jay started questioning Roman's dominance. Jimmy turned rebel. Heyman looked panicked. Roman manipulated everyone with precision. But Solo? He never flinched. And he never chose sides. He moved like a man with his own agenda. One of the most telling moments came during a backstage segment months before Night of Champions. Roman told Solo, "You work for me." Solo didn't respond. He just stared. Not out of loyalty. Not out of fear. But as if to say, I don't work for anyone. And that right there is the difference between Solo and the rest of the bloodline. Roman rules through fear. Jimmy rebels out of emotion. Jay got caught in the middle. Solo? He doesn't care about any of it. He's not interested in power struggles. He's interested in impact. He's a throwback to the old days, when wrestlers didn't need soap opera arcs to sell tickets. He's a modern-day rogue. Equal parts Umaga and early Taz, mixed with the cold psychology of Brock Lesnar. Except there's one key difference: Solo doesn't need a mouthpiece. Brock always had Paul Heyman. Umaga had Armando Estrada. Even Roman, at the peak of his dominance, needed Heyman as his hype man and buffer. Solo doesn't. He doesn't say much, and he doesn't have to. The menace is in the silence. And that silence has become a language of its own. Every time Solo walks out, he says without speaking, "I'm not here to be your star. I'm here to be your ending." That's what makes Triple H's concern so real. He didn't see just another rising talent. He saw someone stepping outside the lines of what WWE superstars are supposed to be. WWE is built on structure. Characters. Merchandise. Arcs that are planned, teased, paid off. It's a machine, and everyone plays a part. Solo isn't playing. He's dismantling. Even within creative circles, the discussion around Solo is different. Most up-and-comers are discussed in terms of potential. He's a future main eventer. He's got a great look. He's over with the crowd. But with Solo, the question isn't about potential. It's about control. Can he be managed? Can he be directed? Or will he do what he wants when he wants? Those are the questions being whispered now. And it's not just about booking. It's about presence. It's about what happens when a performer becomes bigger than the box they were built for. That's the risk with someone like Solo Sikoa. He's too real. Too unpredictable. Too effective at what he does. In wrestling, unpredictability is great, until it isn't. Until it starts challenging creative. Until it shifts the chemistry of storylines. Until it makes the top stars look small. And Solo, whether intentionally or not, is doing all of that. He's not a star in the making. He's a star that doesn't care about being one. And that's what throws everything off balance. Because now, WWE's biggest asset might also be its biggest liability. That's what Triple H saw at Night of Champions. Not just a dominant performer. Not just a man who went over strong. He saw a new kind of force. One that doesn't obey. That's why the reaction was what it was. Not a cheer. Not a grin. Not a handshake waiting backstage. But silence. You don't celebrate an earthquake. You brace for the aftershocks. Solo Sikoa isn't just part of the bloodline. He's not just the enforcer. He's the mutation. The part of the system that stopped following the algorithm. The proof that even the most tightly controlled machine can produce something uncontrollable. And the scariest part? He's just getting started. What's going on with the bloodline? There was a time when the bloodline was the most dominant faction in WWE. Not just in terms of wins and titles, but in the aura they carried. Every entrance felt like royalty arriving. Every segment carried the weight of a dynasty ruling from the top of the mountain. Roman Reigns sat at the head of the table, flanked by his loyal cousins Jimmy and Jey Uso, backed by the ever-calculating Paul Heyman. Then Solo Sikoa arrived, silent, brutal, and obedient. At first, it was poetry. Everything clicked. Titles were unified. Matches were controlled. Opponents were dismantled. The bloodline didn't just win matches, they suffocated storylines. They were the gravity everything else in WWE was forced to orbit. But dynasties don't last forever. They rot from the inside. That's where we are now. Not in the glory days, but in the slow, stomach-churning collapse. The tension that doesn't snap immediately, but hums underneath everything like a bomb waiting to go off. The first real crack came from within. It started when Roman began leaning harder into manipulation. His leadership became less about unity and more about dominance. He wasn't just the tribal chief, he was a tyrant. And tyrants breed resentment. Jey Uso was the first to feel it. The right-hand man. The emotional core of the bloodline. He'd been manipulated into loyalty early on, broken down emotionally and mentally until he fell in line. But as the months went by, you could see the toll. Every time Roman barked an order, every time Paul Heyman covered for his arrogance, Jey's eyes got darker. Emptier. Then came Jimmy. The louder brother. The more impulsive one. Less likely to internalize things, more likely to explode. He watched Jey suffer and decided enough was enough. When he finally snapped and super-kicked Roman, it wasn't just a plot point. It was a rebellion years in the making. The crowd erupted. The moment went viral. Everyone knew what it meant. The Usos weren't falling in line anymore. They were walking out of the empire they helped build. Roman, ever the strategist, didn't panic. He turned to Solo. That's where the danger began. Because Solo wasn't emotionally entangled like his brothers. He hadn't been through the same wars. He didn't carry the same scars. He was brought in late, almost like a hired gun. And at first, he played the role. But unlike Jimmy and Jey, Solo didn't love Roman. He didn't hate him either. He felt nothing. He followed orders because that was the mission. Not out of loyalty, but because that's what you do when you're the hammer in someone else's hand. The problem is, hammers break bones, and eventually, they start choosing their own targets. That's exactly what's happening now. With Jey completely out of the picture, and Jimmy off script doing his own thing, Solo has slowly started operating without oversight. His attacks have become more brutal. His timing more autonomous. He no longer looks to Heyman for approval. He doesn't wait for Roman's nod. He moves when he wants to. And if you pay close attention, Heyman's body language has changed. Once the confident puppet master whispering into Roman's ear, now he's a nervous wreck. Whenever Solo stands beside him, Heyman doesn't look empowered. He looks anxious, like he's not sure what Solo will do next, or if he'll be the next target. Because here's the terrifying truth, Solo doesn't need anyone anymore. He's not part of the crumbling bloodline. He's the next evolution of it. WWE built the bloodline around Roman's image, a leader, a unifier, a symbol of legacy and dominance. But Solo doesn't carry that weight. He doesn't care about legacy. He doesn't demand acknowledgement. He doesn't preach hierarchy. He acts. And that shift, away from structured dominance toward chaotic autonomy, is what makes Solo so dangerous. When the bloodline started, every move felt orchestrated. Now, it feels improvised. Not in the storyline sense, but in the energy. The chaos isn't coming from challengers anymore. It's coming from within. Roman has been increasingly absent. Whether due to part-time status, injury, or storyline decisions, his absence has left a power vacuum. One that no one has officially filled, but Solo has unofficially stepped into. And he's not trying to restore order. He's thriving in the disorder. This is where things get political. Behind the scenes, factions like the Bloodline are used as creative vehicles to elevate talent, sell merchandise, and anchor weekly programming. When it works, everyone benefits. But when it starts to unravel, the fallout spreads fast. Ratings dip. Narratives collapse. Stars lose momentum. That's the tightrope WWE walks with the Bloodline right now. Roman's aura still holds weight, but it's fading. The Usos have split from the faction and may not be rejoining anytime soon. Heyman is visibly losing influence. The only one gaining power is Solo. And he's doing it without asking permission. This is the exact nightmare Triple H would be trying to avoid. Because when a performer starts stepping outside the lane, when they begin to dictate tone rather than follow it, it throws the entire ecosystem off balance. Solo's rise isn't happening because of story. It's happening in spite of it. That's what makes this implosion so unique. It's not happening with a dramatic betrayal or a decisive loss. It's not a traditional end of a faction storyline. It's a slow decay. A loss of identity. A shift in tone. And in that void, Solo is ascending. There's a reason fans are beginning to call him the new tribal chief, not out of loyalty, but out of fear. Because he's the one left standing. He's the one still dominating. He's the one no one can seem to control. If the Bloodline was a throne, Solo's not waiting to be crowned. He's building his own. So what does this mean going forward? It means everything is up for grabs. Roman's return, when it comes, may not restore order. It might trigger war. Heyman might have to choose survival over loyalty. Jimmy might come back, but he won't recognize the family he left. And Jay? He's out. For now. But even he knows, if you want to get to the top now, you don't have to go through Roman. You have to go through Solo. The Bloodline was once the most cohesive unit in WWE. Now it's a battlefield of shifting loyalties, broken rules, and rising threats. And standing in the middle of it all is a man who was supposed to be just muscle. Solo Sikoa. The last loyal soldier. Or maybe, the first warlord of what comes next. Triple H doesn't panic. That's rule number 1. He never has, not as a performer, not as a backstage leader, not as the man now steering the creative ship of WWE. Whether he was taking chair shots in the Attitude Era or navigating the real-life chaos of Vince McMahon's retirement and return, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, born Paul Levesque, has always projected one thing above all: control. So when you see him frozen after Solo Sikoa's win at Night of Champions, when you see him make that silent call without a word to anyone around him, the question isn't, is he shocked? It's, why did he break character? Because that's exactly what he did. Triple H is always working. Even now, in his role as Chief Content Officer, He blends real leadership with on-screen storytelling. He knows where the cameras are. He knows what images get clipped, shared, analyzed. So when he stands still, arms folded, lips tight, when he doesn't say a word, that's not a misstep. That's a fracture. That's an unplanned moment leaking into the system. To understand the weight of his silence, you have to understand how he operates. As a wrestler, Triple H built his identity around being cerebral. He wasn't the flashiest. He wasn't the fastest. But he was always calculating. Watching. Waiting. Choosing the right moment to strike. His nickname, the Cerebral Assassin, wasn't just branding, it was a mindset. He knew how to control a crowd, a match, and a storyline without raising his voice. He took that same mindset into executive life. When he took over NXT in the early 2010s, it wasn't just a developmental territory anymore. Under his vision, it became a proving ground for wrestlers who didn't fit the Vince McMahon mold, more athletic, more grounded in reality, more international in flavor. He built stars like Finn Balor, Kevin Owens, Sasha Banks, Bayley, Sami Zayn, and Tommaso Ciampa. He didn't just recruit. He shaped. He put people in positions to succeed based on timing, crowd momentum, and long-term planning. When his version of NXT was at its peak, it didn't feel like a feeder brand. It felt like the soul of pro wrestling. That's the lens Triple H brings to every booking decision now on the main roster. He thinks long. He builds slow. He doesn't pop for quick wins. He looks for sustained leverage. So what happens when someone like Solo Sikoa disrupts that system? The issue isn't that Solo won. It's how he won, and what that win represents. Solo's victory wasn't theatrical. It wasn't framed as an underdog moment. It wasn't even triumphant. It was surgical. Cold. Efficient. And then it was over. No pageantry. No mic time. No follow-up segment. Just domination and departure. That kind of moment usually excites a strategist like Triple H. It gives him raw material to sculpt. But instead, we saw Hunter staring at the screen like he was watching a machine malfunction in real time. And that's what Solo is, in a way, a machine built within a system, now behaving unpredictably. When Triple H books someone to ascend, the signs are there. Gradual exposure. A marquee moment. A signature match. A well-timed promo. Merch pushed. New entrance music. It's a process. Solo's rise hasn't followed any of that. He doesn't cut long promos. He doesn't pose after victories. He doesn't do media tours. He doesn't seem to want anything, at least not publicly. He's not climbing the ladder, he's walking through it. That's the kind of anomaly Triple H isn't built to manage easily. Because how do you book a character who won't play by the rules, even the backstage ones? People close to WWE's creative structure say Hunter respects Solo. That's not in question. But respect doesn't mean comfort. And you could see the discomfort all over his face that night. And then came the phone call. Whoever was on the other end, you can be sure of one thing, it was someone who needed to be looped in fast. Triple H doesn't just call. He doesn't escalate unless there's risk. And that's what Solo represents now, risk. Not because he's wild. But because he's calm in a way that suggests he's no longer waiting for permission. That's not the kind of energy WWE is designed to handle. Think about the structure Triple H has spent his post-wrestling life trying to build. He's methodical. He likes narratives that stretch across months. He values payoff over surprise. He respects heat but craves consistency. Solo doesn't check those boxes. Solo is heat without context. Presence without setup. Power without precedent. And here's the part that should keep Hunter up at night, the fans love it. Not in the traditional way. Not like a Cody Rhodes return or a Seth Rollins chant-along. They love Solo the way people watch a thunderstorm from their window. Nervous, awestruck, quiet. It's that silent approval, that visceral engagement, that makes Solo uncontrollable. Because if the fans keep responding to him on this level, without needing a storyline to carry it, then creative control becomes optional. Optional becomes obsolete. And obsolete becomes dangerous. Triple H has worked too hard to let the architecture slip like that. In a business built on control, Solo is introducing chaos. And chaos isn't just a booking challenge, it's a branding nightmare. You can't sell shirts with silence. You can't license unpredictability. You can't plan 6 months of TV around a performer who might not follow the emotional arc you need. But here's the kicker, you also can't stop momentum when it starts rolling downhill. Not without breaking it. Not without a backlash. Triple H is in a corner. He can either lean into Solo's rise, and risk the rest of the bloodline narrative collapsing around it. Or he can try to manage it. And risk neutering the very thing that makes Solo compelling. Either way, it's a problem. That's why the phone came out. Because somewhere in that moment, Triple H realized he didn't just witness a win, he witnessed a shift. He's not just dealing with an ascendant star. He's dealing with a breakout variable. One that may have just made every future Bloodline segment impossible to predict. And in WWE, unpredictability isn't exciting when it happens backstage. It's terrifying. Triple H has managed through Vince's unpredictability. Through corporate shakeups. Through media mergers. Through pandemic-era empty arenas. Through locker room ego wars and fan revolts. But this is different. This is internal. This is one of his own, a man brought in through his pipeline, nurtured through his system, now potentially undermining his authority. Solo isn't doing it loudly. He's doing it quietly. Just like Triple H taught him. The silence said a lot. The call said more. When Triple H reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and made a call in the immediate aftermath of Solo Sikoa's victory, it wasn't dramatic. There was no yelling. No slammed doors. No pacing or gesturing. Just precision. It was brief. Quiet. Intentional. But for those watching closely, it was like seeing a chess grandmaster tip a piece forward mid-match, not a declaration of victory, but an acknowledgement that something had shifted. And what makes that moment stand out isn't just that Triple H made a call. It's that it didn't look like part of the show. In a universe where everything is produced, where every stare and line and gesture is mapped out in rehearsal, this didn't look mapped. This didn't look rehearsed. It looked real. So who was on the other end of that call? That question has been lighting up Reddit threads, fan pages, and backstage rumor mills ever since. Not because fans are desperate for gossip, but because everyone knows that call mattered. There are only a few names that make sense. Let's start with the most obvious. This theory holds weight. Roman's absence has left a hole in the bloodline structure. If Triple H saw Solo's win as more than a routine victory, if he saw it as a power grab, he may have called Roman to signal that the empire he built was under threat. It wouldn't be a courtesy call. It would be a warning. Something like, your cousin just made a move. One you didn't authorize. And the crowd loved it. But the tone matters here. Triple H didn't look like a man calling to strategize. He looked like someone delivering intel. And Roman doesn't take orders. If that call went to Roman, it wasn't collaborative, it was confrontational. Heyman is closer to Solo than anyone. He's also the one visibly unraveling during all of this. Watching Solo win without joy. Standing behind him, not beside him. Triple H could have been calling to check the temperature. Is he still listening to you? Did you know he was going to go that far? Or worse, are you still in control of him at all? But here's where that theory breaks down. Heyman is always in the building. Always hovering near Gorilla. If Hunter wanted to talk to Heyman, he could have done it face to face. No, that call wasn't internal. It was external. And that opens up the most interesting possibilities. Maybe it wasn't about Solo directly. Maybe it was about containment. Maybe it was about calling someone who can match Solo's energy. Someone not currently in play. A name like Seth Rollins. The current top face. The guy Triple H trusts. The one who doesn't need a script to sell a confrontation. Or Shawn Michaels. NXT boss. The man who first helped mold Solo in the developmental system. Maybe Hunter wanted to know, did we miss something when we brought him up? Did you see this coming? Or perhaps it was a name no one's ready for yet. The Rock. Far-fetched? Maybe. But Solo's family tree runs deep. And if the entire bloodline is now shaking at the roots, who better to call than the man who is the tree? The idea of Solo bypassing Roman, building his own dominance, and forcing The Rock to step in and restore order is the kind of seismic storyline WWE hasn't tapped in decades. Could Triple H have called Rock? Not to invite him back, but to alert him. There's a new storm coming. You might want to see this for yourself. Whatever the call was, it wasn't casual. It wasn't a placeholder for screen time. It was deliberate. That moment, short as it was, carried weight. It told fans something without telling them anything. And in storytelling, especially in wrestling, that's rare. Usually, a phone call is followed up with a promo. Or an appearance. Or at least a comment in a later segment. But this one? We never heard about it again. And that's why it worked. It wasn't for the casual fan. It was for the ones watching too closely. For the ones who understand that in WWE, silence is the biggest tell. So let's ask the real question, was Triple H calling for backup? Or calling to start something? Was this a reaction? Or a trigger? Is Solo Sikoa now the face of something WWE didn't plan? And if so, what's coming? The moment Triple H moved in silence, everything else in the bloodline story turned into background noise. Because now, the real drama isn't who gets pinned. It's who gets the next call. The match ended. Solo Sikoa's hand was raised. Triple H made his quiet exit. But backstage? That's where the real noise started. If the audience felt a shift during Night of Champions, the locker room felt a tremor. Something was different, and everyone could sense it. The reaction wasn't like other nights where a young talent gets a big win. There was no collective high five. No congratulations party. No one gathered around monitors saying, that was it. What there was tension. Not fear. Not chaos. Just a low, creeping sense that something had happened that hadn't been entirely planned, and worse, might not be fixable. Several WWE staff members, writers, producers, even security, spoke under the condition of anonymity after the event. And the common thread among all their reactions was this: Triple H wasn't happy. One mid-level creative team member reportedly told a peer backstage. He didn't say anything for like 10 minutes after the call. He just walked past us with that look. You know the one, when he's calculating but not showing it. I've seen him like that before. That usually means we're about to pivot hard. What's interesting is how few people even knew Solo would be winning in such dominant fashion. Another producer reportedly said, the finish wasn't the surprise. It was the tone. It was how clean and how cold the match was. There was supposed to be some post-match tension. Something to show inner conflict. But it didn't happen. It was just Solo standing tall, like he owned the place. That wasn't the mood we expected. And that's why everyone started looking around like, did something change mid-match? That question, did Solo go off script, has been circulating ever since. And while there's no official confirmation that he deviated from the plan, the way the match felt versus how it was pitched internally raises some flags. WWE is a tightly controlled environment. Especially in premium live events, every sequence, every promo beat, every post-match segment is scripted down to the second. So when something feels off, it usually is. And Solo's performance that night didn't feel like someone executing a script. It felt like someone making a statement. That made a lot of people backstage uneasy, not because Solo disrespected anyone, but because he made them realize he doesn't need anyone. And in WWE, that's dangerous. Veterans in the locker room reportedly avoided eye contact after the match. Not out of disrespect, but uncertainty. One long-tenured performer allegedly said to a stagehand, "I've been here 15 years. I know what it looks like when someone's being built. But this didn't look like a build. This looked like a takeover." Even Paul Heyman was described as being visibly nervous after the match. Sources say Heyman wasn't involved in any post-match creative discussions, which is highly unusual. He's often one of the first voices Triple H consults with on Bloodline business. So when Heyman stood alone outside the dressing room, eyes scanning the hallway, avoiding questions, it told people all they needed to know. Heyman is a master manipulator. A performer who always knows where the camera is. But that night, he looked less like a character, and more like a man trying to figure out where the train went off the rails. It wasn't just talent who took notice. Production staff reportedly scrambled in the control room when the broadcast cut to Triple H's reaction longer than expected. "It wasn't supposed to linger that long," said a source in the truck. "We were supposed to cut away quicker. But Kevin Dunn let it ride, and everyone just watched Hunter make that call." It was one of those moments where everyone realized, oh, this is real. That moment, those few seconds of unfiltered footage, have now become the subject of debate internally. Was it a mistake? Was it deliberate? Some believe it was an intentional leak of authenticity. A choice to blend reality with story in a way that fans haven't seen since the CM Punk pipe bomb or the Montreal Screwjob aftermath. Others believe it was a crack in the wall. A sign that not even WWE's top brass is fully in control anymore. And still others think something even deeper is happening. A high-ranking WWE source, anonymous but verified, put it this way: Hunter's not mad that Solo won. He's mad that the story changed without his input. He doesn't like losing narrative control. And right now, Solo is doing things that aren't part of the original arc. He's becoming something bigger than the role we carved for him. That's where the tension is coming from. Because we can't shape him anymore, he's shaping us. That's not just hyperbole. The business side of WWE is deeply connected to control, over stories, over crowd reactions, over character momentum. So when a performer starts to move independently, it disrupts more than just storylines. It disrupts branding, merchandising, scheduling, creative synergy. You can't sell a character you can't predict. And Solo has now crossed that line. He doesn't speak often. Doesn't explain his actions. Doesn't sell his own story. And that makes it hard to position him on posters, in campaigns, in media outreach. He's a star that can't be weaponized commercially yet, and that's a problem for a company that needs structure to scale. Yet, despite all of this backstage unease, there's a powerful undercurrent of respect. No one is saying Solo is out of control in the unprofessional sense. No reports of arrogance. No issues with the locker room. No ego clashes. What people are saying is simpler. And more unsettling. He's operating on a different frequency. He doesn't need heat, one veteran said. He is heat. Another added, he's not waiting for the push. He already pushed. It's that quiet inevitability that has WWE insiders whispering about what comes next. Is this where Solo breaks away from the bloodline officially? Is this the beginning of a run that bypasses Roman entirely? Is this the first domino in something far bigger? One longtime backstage coordinator reportedly told his team after the show, "Something's going to change. Mark my words. This isn't just a title run. This is a correction. The machine's been running on the wrong guy, and now it's catching up to us." That's not just internal hyperbole. That's a warning. The shift in energy backstage is clear. Triple H knows it. Heyman feels it. The roster senses it. And now, the fans are part of it. Everyone's watching Solo Sikoa. Not just because of what he did, but because of what everyone else did afterward. Or didn't do.